Okay, so welcome to Urban Brand Creatives, and today we have Pat Downs. Pat is the owner and CEO of Lionheart Consultancy, and Lionheart is a specialist consultancy that provides bespoke professional services in the field of corporate governance. Welcome to Urban Brand Creatives, Pat.
Well, thanks, Keith. Great to be here, and good to be out in the wide world again.
Yeah, no kidding. It's how are you transitioning post-lockdown to everything?
Well, it's been seamless to a certain degree insofar as we got back on the bike fairly quickly and started cycling furiously to catch up. But luckily, as you know, through our early engagement, we had kind of taken that decision to move to virtual platforms before March 2020. So we had been in that space, and most of our business, and thankfully underpinned by our recent website evolution, has been kind of moving to the digital platforms. So it's been a good time. I mean, funnily enough, we were just reflecting on it yesterday. You know, we've seen a leap of transformation in that space where it was going down that way. The train had left the station anyways, and we probably see, you know, what happened over the last 24 months probably would have taken 7 years under normal circumstances.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So every cloud has a silver lining?
Absolutely. And even though this particular cloud rained a little bit for a while, the pandemic was a good learning exercise. Mm-hmm. And, digital transformation, that whole kind of piece in terms of transversal kind of domain and the upskilling there. I went back to college. I don't know if I was telling you that, Keith. I went back to UCD and did a digital entrepreneurial degree.
Amazing.
I felt that you had led with such a passion in terms of the space I would follow and the field that you had ploughed.
That's a charmer. That's why you're in here. Keep it coming, Pat. That's awesome.
Chocolate to your ears.
So look, for people who don't know, right, what is corporate governance, and just how does a company need you? Why do they need you? And how do they even know they need you?
Okay, so I mean, we're about corporate governance primarily, but I guess compliance more generally. And it's a good question. Corporate governance is with us since, if you can throw yourself back to the first codes, which all of us would be familiar with, would have been the 10 Commandments. So it goes right back to the rules of engagement. That's what corporate governance is. You go out on a football field, you know the rules.
Yeah.
So it's just the corporate rules of engagement in terms of how companies are run and what is the right thing to do and what you can do and what you can't do, and behaviours. Mm-hmm. And I guess it's culture and attitude and how people go about being effective in terms of their board process and so on. And we helped them in that space by doing evaluations and making sure their policies are up to date and adding value, I suppose. And again, if you look at trends, and we talk about digital transformation, and you and I were talking about this earlier, and people are seeing a huge jump in certain areas, be it sustainability is a huge trend at the moment, and environmental and social governance, that ESG, those terms. So we're seeing huge jumps forward in terms of how people engage, and even down to how they buy their products. So it's the commission of people looking at kind of, the provenance of their product, where it was bought, where it was manufactured, what the carbon footprint of it being kind of delivered was. So all those things kind of cascade back into how businesses capture and deliver meaning for their clients and for their owners and shareholders.
And so what type of clients do you typically see, and what's the journey like with them?
Yeah, it's a broad field, thankfully, and our client base has evolved. Certainly last year we were very busy in the charity and non-government organisation space because the charities regulator brought in some new codes, if you will, which vested last year. So a lot of charities were kind of getting housekeeping done and getting their house in order, if you will, in terms of that. And most of them were in good order anyways, but it was just tightening up and calibrating and making sure they were fit for purpose in terms of reporting structures. We also do a lot of state work, and there's mandatory codes and reporting structures there. And we do the corporate space, where corporates generally are very probate in terms of how they run their boards. And boards really are, I suppose, the strategic end of the business. They oversee the direction of the company. So I would often say that our business is kind of the people that are looking up the periscope, looking out, as opposed to the management and the tactical side are looking in the rearview mirror, looking back at the performance and the KPIs. So we assist them in terms of what best practices in that space, what it looks like.
And what are, given that you've worked for decades now with hundreds of businesses and with boards and leaders, tier A, suite A within that industry, is the state of boards in Ireland, is it moving in the right direction? Is there a lot of work to be done? Is there a lot of similar problems that you'll come across that maybe businesses and corporations don't even know they have?
Sure. Well, I often say no one gets out of bed to do a bad day's business, generally speaking. So most people go with good intent in terms of the service on boards, be it state boards or charity boards, and a lot of them are unpaid as well. So it's out of the goodness of their heart they're doing it if you park the corporate space. The issues we see are sometimes around kind of culture, perhaps, and people not fully understanding the role and responsibilities of being a director. So we do courses in that space, CPD courses. We provide them digitally and on the website and so on. And other areas we would see is just the whole area of regulation and making sure that their policies are up to space. You would have seen in the last couple of years, for example, maybe GDPR would be a big one that most people would be familiar with.
Sure.
Whistleblowing might be another one.
Yeah.
The whole health and safety issues, to make sure that their suites of policies are up to spec and fit for purpose.
So you can help companies on that journey?
Yeah, we make sure that they are fit for purpose and up to date. And that's an ongoing journey. It's if you want to call it a governance Camino, it's never ending because legislation is evolving and changing, and particularly with the EU as well. And even, over the last kind of recent period, you see kind of more legislation coming through in terms of consumer legislation and reporting legislation that organizations have to do.
And imagine this change is the operative word here. There's got to be an appetite for change. What are the telltale signs that a company you're working with have the appetite to change, and conversely that there's no appetite there, that this is vanity metrics?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think all organizations kind of operate in two spheres. Their static organizations are those that are hungry and continue to kind of look towards the future. And we generally kind of attract those that are hungry and are looking to the future, and they are evolving and making sure that they are rigged for bear, if you want to use that term, that they are fit for purpose in order to be agile and get into the best space to deliver their products to their consumers. And if that means having their house in order from a corporate governance point of view, they will do that. Again, it's a bit like sustainability and ESG at the moment, and the whole kind of global footprint after COP21, which you'd probably be familiar with out there in the zeitgeist. There's implications for that in terms of how companies will be doing their business moving forward and reducing their carbon footprint.
And so this is interesting because it's a hot button topic, and there's a lot of greenwashing going on of corporate governance and what they're doing I saw one company saying, we're going to reduce our carbon footprint over the next 50 years. And I was like, 50 years? I was like, it was like a 2% reduction per year. And I remember all the people who work in that company were cheering it out on LinkedIn. I was like, hang on lads, that's not very good. So do you think have industry leaders really cottoned onto this? Is there a desire to do this? And how can Lionheart help them kind of see the value in getting there?
Okay, well, I guess they're taking the Augustinian view on that one. Take me, Lord, but not just yet. So festina lente. Make haste slowly. 50 years might be stretching it a wee bit, but that's okay. I think the main thing is to little steps kind of get you there in the end. Absolutely, most corporations get it, and the train has left the station in terms of this particular subject. Most people are on board and are kind of I suppose making preparations and evolving to make sure they're fit for purpose in that space. What we do, I suppose, is a lot of CPD training to actually get people a grounding and understanding of what the metrics are, what gets measured, gets med, and so on. And from that perspective, we're in that space. We have a couple of partners that do culture, do the whole kind of competence and skill set audits and so forth. And these are really important to have the right people in place, because ultimately it comes down to people. I mean, one of our core values is a 2-word full sentence called people matter. Okay, so they matter to us, but they matter to our clients as well, and having the right people in place. We as a consultancy feel that we're the right people at a given point when we engage with our clients to go in, do the job, deliver the pup, and get out and move on. So that's why we have a lot of repeat business. We're efficient at what we do.
And where do you see the industry going in that regard, like the role for Lionheart and how you can kind of help these businesses move forward? What are you seeing more requests of? Where's the market going?
Yeah, I think the soft side is increasing. I think the technical side is certainly kind of been well managed and well delivered. There's any amount of technical solutions out there at the moment. So it's the soft skills, people, and that area, the whole group dynamics, board dynamics, that area of chairing and the skills that people need to actually deal with white of the eye solutions. So for example, we're coming out of a pandemic where all boards and general meetings and AGMs were held virtually. Very difficult to read body language on a Zoom platform.
Yes, interesting.
Now we're going back into the hybrid thing, and I noticed there yesterday the government allowed meetings and AGMs to go on. They were supposed to finish at the end of April. They're going on until the end of the year, thankfully. But I mean, that whole kind of board dynamic, human dynamic, body language, how do you engage with people in virtual or hybrid platforms to get the best from them? So we do a lot of that. We set up another entity called Future O Work. So we have a couple of partners there, and all they do is training in that space in terms of the virtual and hybrid platforms, how to get the best from people. And again, it's about trust. Our experience has been when people are working from home, the WFH, if you remember hashtag. The only way that really works is if they're being kind of managed in a trustworthy basis, that you trust them to get the work done. And it is literally a symbiotic relationship. So it's not the old 9-to-5 relationship managing down. Because if you're pushing down, someone has to push up. So you can either push up or push down. So generally you're trying to push people up to get them to a higher standard and assist them. I often say, one of the things we kind of reflect on, it's easier to catch people doing right than catch people doing wrong. And it's more potent as well to actually give them kind of positive feedback. Anyone can be negative. Anyone can catch you doing wrong the whole time. It's very easy. Well, we can all do that. It's much more powerful to catch them doing right.
Praise in public, criticize in private.
That's it.
So basically, if someone brings you in to work any of these policies or strategy pieces with them, what's a kind of, I know how long is a piece of string, but what sort of timeline are you talking about to bring these processes of change?
So it's all bespoke, I would say, at the first point. So each client is different. But generally, if we're doing, for example, we just say a standard board evaluation, that's normally about 6 weeks. Policies, for example, we concluded one yesterday. I think there was 24 different policy modules within the suite. That, again, we were able to turn around within an 8-week period. But it really, it's contingent and bespoke to the client, what they want. And it's evolving the whole time. Their needs are changing. And we often assist them kind of on broader areas of governance as well, be it kind of training on diversity and inclusion. And that's a very big space as well.
I know you touched upon that earlier, and that just is a nice segue, because we've talked about diversity, inclusion, and hashtag irony. This is two white men talking about diversity and inclusion. But where is that going, and how real is that felt within the upper echelons of decision-making structures within corporate Ireland?
Sure. Well, traditionally it would be the pale, male and stale syndrome. But I certainly think there's no doubt in my mind it's changing at a rate of knots. The government brought in legislation that for state boards they were looking at 40% female ratio in terms of gender balance. But the broader legislation is coming in on a European basis as well, so that'll be cascading through. So you'll see a very much kind of good and positive gender balance. Now, what I would say is that's fine, but diversity is a much broader church than that, if I can use that term. I mean, diversity can be age or youth, it can be background, social or economic, or kind of background. It can be colour, for example, or it can be experience. So I think in order to leverage the best thinking, and that's what the only reason you're doing this, if you're being brutally honest about it, is to get the best thought process and get the broadest possible intellectual capacity being focused on a particular topic. And in order to do that, you need to bring in broad diversity. So it's not all about gender, which is very important. It also should be about kind of, I would say digital diversity is a real big one at the moment. You need digital natives.
Okay.
So, young people with digital skills are really, really potent.
We get that a lot with Urban Brand Creative. We get people rocking up going, it's remarkable, because they're kind of only, I don't know if it's only in Ireland, but we have clients all the time, being like yourself, being really strong domain authority in what they do, being fantastic in this industry, and then self-flagellating themselves because they're not also gurus in marketing and branding. But it's a completely different skill set that takes time. And a lot of people, it's changing, but you still get a lot of, sure, it's just a post, or it's just this. It's a very reactionary firefighting frame of mind. So when you talk about digital natives as part of the inclusivity, absolutely, I think that's crucial. We have to be where people are right now to reach them. And we are a super abundance of choice. I was on a call with the head of Meta European marketing, and she was saying that the average Meta or Facebook consumer scrolls through over 80 meters of live feed every day, like 80 meters. So for you to resonate and to connect with people, you have like seconds before they bounce right out of there. Interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, it used to be in the old way in terms of command presence, and so when you walk into a room, people have made up their minds in kind of 3 seconds, 3 to 4 seconds. It's probably shorter now because people are scrolling so much. And the problem with that is attention span has diminished accordingly.
Yeah.
And that's a real challenge for serious topics. So the diversity issue is one where I think it adds value if it's done properly. But to that end, we address that through skill sets and competency audits. So it's kind of like having a look at the as is, maybe looking at what you're doing, what the scope of your business is, and then maybe looking at what particular areas of diversity would add value to the team, okay, whatever that may be. And there's no right and wrong answer on it. Another area, you can't be all things to all men or women, indeed.
For sure.
So I think I was looking at something recently on a podcast we did separately, but the future is uber niche. So recognize that you have a particular skill set, focus relentlessly on that, and feed, because there's so much out there, and the way the world has gone, you can go down to the subcontinent and harvest kind of people down there very quickly in terms of the skills that they're deploying. So you need to be uber niche in terms of the space that you're in order to be successful now, we feel.
And I think you're a poster pin-up example of that, Pat. Pat, people want to reach you. What's the best way? How can they find you?
They can get us at the seminal website, which is groundbreaking, done by no better people than yourselves, in fairness to you, www.lionheart.ie, Freudian slip there, or you can get me at patrick@lionheart.ie.
Patrick, thank you so much for your time today, coming in and sharing your insights. It's great to meet you in the flesh.
Gurmil Mahagat.